Hey everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78, and man oh man, what a difference a year could make. I am living proof of that, changing my thought process, changing my intentions. All of that really matters in the grand scheme of things. And I thought with 2025 starting off, I would revisit one of the segments I did back a couple years ago about Akashic readings and intentions and everything else. Bridget Rose, an incredible person that I got a chance to sit down with to talk about changing your intentions for 2025, really being clear about that, changing your mindset, the whole thing. That is the story from this 78 with my friend Bridget Rose. So I've made it inside the fancy offices that you have here on Chicago's North Side. I'm here with Bridget Rose. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for having me back with you. When we first met, we went over Akashic readings, right?
Yes.
Is that the proper term?
Akashic, yes.
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 Briefly, just explain what that is for folks who maybe have not seen that video.
Yeah, so the Akashic Records, they're the energetic library of your soul. So Tom and I got to do a reading together and we tapped into his soul. It's kind of like, if you've never thought of it before, it's like me giving you a book and you opening the book and it's every lifetime you've ever experienced. So if you think of this like, oh, we're soul having a human experience, we get to go back into other lifetimes we've experienced and kind of see the lesson that's shaping out in this one too. So.
And I imagine some people have more lifetimes than others just because humans are humans. I mean, there's probably no number,
Probably,
right?
yeah. I'm like, it's so funny with all this stuff because I'm like, we don't know if any of this is true. But I think to the point, yeah, maybe there's people that are older souls and people that have had more experiences, maybe here or different places. So, yeah.
And in 2025, it's the beginning of the year. A lot of people always want to do the fresh new thing to help them set their year correctly. And I mean fresh new thing like they're not going to, they're going to not eat fast food and they're set good intentions for the year. And you have something with your website and membership services that you offer folks for 2025. You want to run through a little bit of what intention setting is?
So I'm doing this with my membership portal and I'm excited to do this with you guys. So we do this every start of the year, fresh start, new intentions. And what I always think of when you're setting intentions, because everyone likes that new, feeling and vibe of the new year. And I think it's always good though to look back at what you've already done and accomplished and kind of think about like, what am I proud of from 2024 and who I became as a result of all the hard work that I put in. And so I think, again, when we are intention setting, we don't want to just go in and be like, forget last year and that was like, oh my god, like screw that. Yeah. So I think it's good
going
to be
through
like
everything for a reason.
Yeah,
for the most, even if it's hard and it sucks at the time,
totally.
Right?
And be proud of yourself and be like, you know what, I made it. And I think so I always start this off like, what version of you maybe are you ready to leave behind or are you proud of? And I think it's, this new year always brings in times of transitions that maybe we're afraid of. Like some people could be going from like single to motherhood or be going from transitions in careers. And I think that, this brings up a lot of that. So I think sometimes it's cool to be like, okay, I do have a fresh start, but who am I? Who is the version of me that brought me here? So we always kind of start with that. And then what version am I excited to step into? And what I love about this work is like there's infinite possibilities. Like you could shoot for the stars.
So do people, when you're doing this, are they supposed to write it down? Are they supposed to just internally think of it? How do you go about showing? Because this is online, this portion of it, right?
Yeah, good question. So I always say to like grab a journal and journal. So this part we journal on just reflective, like I didn't write this, but like what, again, version are you proud of that brought you through 2024 that's going to bring you into 2025. And so, yeah, a lot of journaling, reflecting that way. And then we'll usually share.
And so that you do that prior to the class and then in the session, I should say.
Yeah.
And that's when you go through these and then people have that stuff for you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. So
or we do it live too. Most of this is more
fun.
like live.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited to do the cards with you too. But yeah, all of it's live. It's a good group. And so then, they share with each other.
So, okay, so this is the first part. How many steps are there for this?
There's this one, I'll take you guys through like a few tools. So maybe it's like, I don't know how many, like a 5-step process. Sure, because then I'll go through like what intentions actually are and how you want to feel. Because I think that's a big word. Like people are like, is it intention or is it goals? Like, is it more masculine or feminine? And so then we go into this and just explain a little bit of what intentions are. And I always ask these questions like, how do you, when you're setting an intention for the new year, like, how do you want to feel versus maybe like a lot of us have those goals that are more, again, like masculine and I want to make X amount of money and do
I see what you
this.
mean.
And
Okay.
so say you're like, I want to make $1 million, but it's like, how do you want to feel when you're in the process of making that $1 million?
I think that's an important aspect is how do you want to feel in the process? People always have the end game of what they want, but they never really talk about how you should feel getting to that point, which is really fascinating.
Which I love. I'm like, that's the intention. That's what we were talking about earlier too. Like, what's your intention behind what you want to do? Because you can have the Lamborghini and the millions of dollars, but you could feel like a shell of yourself. So I never want people to feel that way. I want them always to be like, okay, what's my intention? It's amazing to have these things, but how am I going to feel? And I think that's really important. So then we go through like what's actually tangible, do you think, this year and in reach, and what feels out of reach, but is actually something that you want. So I think that's sometimes a challenge where we keep ourselves safe. We're like, oh, I guess I could just make this amount
That's
of
our
money.
biggest hurdle, do you think, is that people just tend to always err on the side of being safe?
Yeah.
And it's the hard part is wanting more and putting more out there to do more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because we have so many stories that we have to like decipher through and just tell ourselves like, what if it was, and I like the question too, like the starter prompt of like, what if? And I think that settles our bodies down because our primal brain is always going to gear us towards survival.
Yeah.
And I think what if kind of calms us down a little bit and is like, oh, well, what if I made $1 million?
What if it all works out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep using $1 million. I don't know, whatever you guys want. But
$1 million sounds good to me, Bridget. That's fine.
Sounds fine. I was like, well, what if it all worked out? What if that was the year that this happened? And I think that's a really cool way to frame it too.
Absolutely.
So it leaves room for the magic of it all too, and settles your nervous system a little bit.
Which is, I mean, I think everybody's worst enemy is themselves for the most part, outside of extreme situations. But you have to give yourself grace, be good to yourself. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. So we always kind of preface it that way. And so I'm always like, I want to push my clients a little bit to be like, what's out of reach? And then what action steps can I take or am I already taking to get there? Because I think a lot of intention setting too can be like in the world of manifesting, or people think it's just going to come out of thin air. But in reality, it's like, what are the baby steps that I'm taking each day now that I've set the intention and now it's out there?
That's
now,
the
how
work.
am I going to, I'm always telling people, I'm like, you're not just going to find the love of your life, like, falling out of thin air, and maybe
it's not a
you
rom-com.
did, but it's like, I'm like, someone said this to me the other day, like, if you want a fireman, like, set the house on fire and see if they I was like, oh my God. So
You might get more than you want on that one.
I was like, not committing arson, but it was funny. I'm like, oh yeah, you have to literally like put in the work or do something. And so, it's just, that was funny. But I think that's a big part of these intentions is don't just leave them in January of 2025. Like, what am I going to do by, 365 days in when it's December 31st? And I've looked back and I'm like, oh, wow. So I think it's cool to then also like put it on like you could take a picture of it and put it as like the background on your phone or like do something.
Almost like a vision board.
Yeah, exactly. So always make sure you're like going back to them too and not forgetting about them also. So that's what we talk about.
Yep.
And then we kind of set them together. And I always tell people, again, check back in. I remember checking back in, or I recommend coming back in like quarterly. You could do it monthly. You can even set monthly.
And that's all, you could do that through their website and to figure out what best works for you.
Totally. The membership, like all of this is in our membership portal.
What is the website?
It's called intuitivelybridget.com.
Just making sure we got that out
Thank
there.
you.
Ding, ding.
And it's like a little section called membership portal and you can join in and all of this is in there for you. But it's cool because this literally doesn't require a lot of work. It's just in a journal and having that safe space that you can kind of.
And you're also you're busy on Instagram as well. So people can find you there too if they want to try out, because you do some things on Instagram too.
Yeah.
Where people can just see, and if this feels right for them, they can continue forward to the website itself. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, anytime.
And so this is so fun. So these are some tools that you can do that maybe will help you with your intentions for the year. So I love using tarot and oracle cards as tools for self-development and reflection. I promise you guys they're not scary. So.
No, she's not. She's not scary.
I'm always
I
like,
promise.
they're not scary.
No,
it's kind of
I
funny.
love coming to talk to you just because you're very grounded and you're nice. And you create an environment where you're not afraid to ask questions that perhaps you might be in other situations.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I love tarot too. So this is a tarot deck. I'll just show you guys. But it is a 78 cards. It's a journey of your life. And it starts with the Fool card, which is like it's the hero's journey, if you've ever heard of like the hero's journey arc. So it starts with the Fool and then it ends with the World. But it talks about the character's journey throughout the entire time. And so it's really cool because I'm always like, tarot, when people are afraid of it, I'm like, oh, you're just afraid of your stories.
Yeah,
like,
there's not voodoo.
no,
it's not
I'm
like
like,
what
it's
people
just a
see in
story.
movies.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have some weird thing come out of the tarot cards and take you to some dimension you don't know. Like,
No.
it's just ridiculous.
It's yeah, it's a big self-reflection tool. So that's how I use it for like a mindfulness practice. And what's cool then, you could always use like journal prompts. So I could show you these, like what is 2025 bringing in for me? And you can journal on this, but you could also like pull a card and ask your deck, like, oh, what is 2025 bringing in for me? So I think it's kind of cool this is what I tell my clients, like to journal on these first and kind of answer the question, but then also use tarot as a tool to pull afterward and ask the same question, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like, for example,
Yeah, should we do something?
we could do one.
All right,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, you tell me what to do. No, I'm just.
We could do one for you, Tom. Like, what
Okay.
is 2025 bringing in? Or you could pull, you know what, actually, because everyone's doing this on their own. So I think there's power in like pulling cards for yourself.
Okay.
So
what do I do?
you can't mess it up. So whenever you pull cards,
Do I need to shuffle or anything?
you could shuffle.
Knock.
I knocked it. I don't know why. That's just like maybe like a
I
force
like
of
the knock.
habit. So,
I'm not very good at the shuffling. So
we're just You could shuffle. You can't mess it up.
do the old. I'll do it. Wait, no, do the.
Well,
That's very brand for me. Okay, so now what do I do?
so now we'll just ask the deck, like, okay, you'll ask what is 25 bringing in for me, and
is-
I'm going to ask that for myself too,
Okay.
and so we'll see what both of us get.
Okay. All right, so what do I need to do? You're just pulling the card.
You're pulling for you, yeah. You could just pull a card.
All right, so I'm going to pull this up here. Okay. That's it. What's that one?
Golden Children.
What's that
That's
mean?
crazy. Willow. That's amazing.
Full disclosure, just had a newborn in November, little Willow. So what is...
is this? Okay, so this is what I do. So I'll tell, usually if you pull a card, I always say like, what do you think it means for you? So you could read this and you could be like, okay, it says inner child, tenderness.
Innocence, rare gifts.
Yeah, so I would be like, okay, Tom, does this like relate in any way, shape, or form? Or do you feel blah, blah, blah? So I'd ask those questions. And then I always say, like, look at the imagery. Like, it's cool to see the artist's interpretation, too, of what they wanted to do for the card. So usually I would journal on the card
That's
first.
a pretty beautiful card.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Let me get this in there.
Yeah.
There we go. Look at that.
And then I say, okay, now go into the book. So the book will give you a description of the card. Usually they're in alphabetical order. So let's see if I can. Okay. So you have the Golden Children. This is kind of crazy. If you pull this card, it may be a sign that you're being called to mother, father, or nurture a child.
Huh. Well, check and check.
This is crazy. It says golden children are highly advanced, extremely intelligent souls who are incarnating increasingly on planet Earth. They have little or no personal karma and possess incredible gifts and intuitive abilities.
Isn't that funny? We were talking about that off camera before we even got started. I'm not even kidding. That's
Weird.
crazy.
It literally says golden children are born with a very clear mission. Many remember it from a young age and begin answering and sharing it early in life. Due to their unique intelligence, they may find themselves easily bored at school. That's so funny. I could read this whole thing, but they're often referred to as the new humans. So, wow, how cool.
That's all the stuff we talked about.
That's so weird.
Wow, that's not coincidence.
yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So it's fun to like, again, see what resonates. And I always tell people like, take what resonates, leave the rest. It truly like, especially if you're making big life decisions, I'm like, guys, they're just cards. Like your intuition is the biggest like intuitive tool, or your body, obviously. But I got the star, which I think is fun.
What does the star tell
The
you?
star is, so the star comes after, so tarot is sequential, and the star comes after the tower in tarot, and the tower in tarot is when like your old structure and ego and everything, it's basically a big upheaval.
Oh.
So now it's like the upheaval I've gone through, which is actually nice to see. Now it's like, oh, 2025 is the star. So I get to have like wishes fulfilled. It's a fun year for me and a lot of like personal fulfillment.
Well, that's exciting for you.
I'm excited.
That's great.
So, and it's ruled by the sign Aquarius, which You are, which I think is fun. And
Yeah.
Aquarians are like very quirky and different. It's almost like do it differently, like do
Yes,
it
we
your
do.
way. So I love it. So yeah, you guys can go through them. Like I would have everyone go through these prompts and like other prompts, and you can make up the prompts too. Like you could ask your tarot deck anything, but I think more open-ended are fun too. Like what new mountain am I ready to climb? What am I most proud of from 2024? And if it was December 2025 and I was looking back, like what advice would I give myself?
Okay.
Another thing you guys can do is write a letter to yourself. I use futureme.org.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
it'll like deliver. It's cool. It's like an email. It'll send you like a year later or whenever you put in for how long you want
that's
it to.
great.
Yeah. So this is always the fun part. Other things you can do is find your personal number of the year. So if you guys are big into numbers, we talked about like repeating numbers and seeing them. So a lot of people see like 1111 or their birthday places, but you also have like a personal number for your year that means something for you. I'm bad at math, you guys. So I usually go to a website. I just Google like, what is my personal year number? And there's like a website. I could like have you link it somewhere, or you can Google it, or sorry, like add it up this way. So personally, like 2025 is a year 9. So it's like 2 plus 2. Wait, is that a year 9? 2 plus 2 plus 5. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Okay. So it's year 9. And so collectively, we're all in a year 9. So all of us are like a lot of endings and kind of closing on a chapter because we're all starting fresh next year. So numerology goes 1 through 9. So it's 9-year cycles.
I see. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't explain that well, but it's 9-year cycles. And so collectively, we're all kind of like ending things now so we can have a fresh start next year in 2026. But it affects you personally. So you can find out like you might be in a year 5 and I could be in a year 2. So we're all kind of like independently, but it's based on your birthday. So
if I'm January 26th, this month.
Yes. So 1 plus 2 plus 6.
9.
9 plus 9, 18. So you're in a year 9.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, so that means I'm ending and beginning in this year.
You're closing a 9-year chapter.
Wow.
That's big. So I would go back and be like, oh, like where was I? I don't get bad with math, guys, but 9 years ago, like where was I? So you're closing that chapter and stepping into something
2014. New. Oh, wow. It's the year I got divorced.
That's crazy.
And wow.
Yes, it all checks.
Wow.
So I'd be like,
that's why I like coming here. Yeah.
Where were you? And if you're in a year 4, where were you 4 years ago? Or like whatever. So it's cool to kind of, and every like number has a different frequency to it. So like 1 is fresh beginnings, 2 is relationships, 3 is community, so on and so forth.
Got it.
So finding that out, and then you could again like it's set intentions around that. Like, oh, if I'm in a year 7, that's a very like cool spiritual advancement year. That's a good time. Maybe my intention is to take a class on intuition. Like,
got it.
So you kind of like set intentions around that too. So. Okay, that's your personal numerology. You also can find your personal tarot card. I did this different. So you can find one for the actual year itself, or you can just find out like the personal tarot card that you were born with. So that's the one I have up here. So like everybody has a actual like, according to your birth date, a personal tarot card that associates with the tarot deck.
Got it.
So that's another cool thing to do. So if we add it up, like this is my sister's birthday, but like June 27th, 1994. So if we added all that up, my sister gets to the number 11, and then we find out, okay, 1 plus 1 is 2. So her card is number 2. This is a little more advanced in the major arcana. So I'd be like, okay, my sister is the high priestess, which is really cool. But you could also be like, you don't have to kind of bring it down to 1 digit. So she adds up to the number 11. She's also, what's it called? The Justice card. So most of us kind of have 2 cards that we carry throughout our lifetimes that we're supposed to kind of embody. And so I always say too, like thinking about like my life mission or my purpose, and it's not just associated with tarot cards, like obviously, it's not just that, but it's like, oh, it's kind of cool to think like, okay, the high priestess is my card, and that's what I came here to embody, and how do I keep embodying that every single year too.
I see.
So another thing for you guys to find, so all of these tools too kind of associate with numbers, And I wanted to make sure you guys like kind of understood. Like I always tell my clients if we're doing stuff with numbers, it's cool to see like, oh, if my card was like a number 2, that also associates with like relationships, balance, union, and maybe like I'm supposed to really be in a partnership this lifetime that I'm going to learn a lot through said partnership. So it all kind of connects that way too.
Numbers, man, they connect everything.
Yeah. And if you see repeating numbers, it's kind of cool to see like, oh, I see 333. We talked about that earlier. And that's like, oh, I'm really in the groove of like mind, body, soul. Like I feel like everything's connected, and it's a good, I call that kind of like a warm hug number too, 333. Or like you could be like, oh my God, you saw 555 yesterday. There's a lot of change happening and travel.
It's true, yeah.
So really cool with that. And then kind of closing, I don't know if you have any questions, but a lot of these tools are just for you. So kind of, I think that's what the spiritual world or like this whole world is about, is like finding what works for you, and not really like you could do all this just by journaling. You don't need the tools either, but I think it's cool to see like, oh, like I do have a personal numerology or number that's working with me, or a personal tarot card, and it makes it more, I guess, personal. It makes it like the intentions a little more fun too.
Yeah, I think I definitely want to know the my number, but we could do that off camera just because there's math involved.
I was like,
time.
I know.
Again, the website for people who want to like start this journey with you.
Yes, it's intuitivelybridget.com, and then go to the section membership portal and you can join it. It's $33 a month. Cancel, join anytime. And we do workshops every single month. So we have 2 workshops a month that are live. And then I do an intuitive guidance video at the beginning of the month where I pull cards and kind of give the monthly energies for that time.
And then you also have a fun event coming up in February.
Yes, at Solflo in Wicker Park. And it's going to be a self-love event. I'm doing it with a couple of my friends. They're the groovy Geminis. So they're awesome. And Tammy, the owner from Solflo, and it's a self-love event. It's healing energy through sound. It's the coolest thing ever. So it's on February 13th. So it's kind of like a Galentine's thing too.
And all that information, I'm guessing, will be on your website too.
And Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much for showing me a little bit of this, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Wow, how about that? That is the story from the 78 here in the Logan Square neighborhood, Tom Barnes, Chicago, at gmail.com if you have a story from the 78 idea, or head over to the website, storiesfromthe78.com. Until then, I'll see you later, and good luck with those intentions and the journaling and the whole thing. All right, see ya.